This is Rif Yomi Beitza, Daf Tesvav. The Mishnah had said that you can send even begadim, even clothing that was kalayim, and that was shatnez. And so the Gemara was discussing how you could possibly send shatnez if it has no possible use on Yom Tov. So at this point, we rejected various possibilities. That we're talking about a curtain, for example, and now on Beitza Daf Tesvav Amid Aleph, we say El Bekashin. We're dealing with stiff material. Ki Adam Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yehoshua. Like he said, Hainamta Gamda de Narash Sharia. This hard felt of Narash is a place, is permitted, and it's permitted to sit upon, because the idea is, in general, it says Lo Ya'ala Al B'Sarcha, that it shouldn't come on your flesh, the shatnez. That was the pasuk, and the Chachamim made a gzeira that you shouldn't even sit on it, lest nima achas, lest the thread bend over and come onto your flesh, and that would be considered a biblical violation then. So they didn't make that gzeira apparently when you have hard material, stiff material, because there's no chashash that it would end up coming on your flesh. Now, continuing in the Gemara, Ardlis, Surei Jezuze Udefishte Udevizarne, Ein Ben Mishum Kalaim Lefish Ein Derechim Bakach. Ardlis, which is undershoes, those are placed under the shoes, with goat leather underneath that level. So, in other words, you have your shoes, you have this this cloth underneath it, and then you have another level under that. But you're not going to end up, it's not going to come on your flesh, it's not going to warm you or anything like that. Surei Jezuze Fishte, coin bags, Ude Bizarne, and seed bags. In Ben Mishum Kalam, you don't have to worry about shatnez. Lefisha Ein Derechim Bakach, you don't get warm by it when you put it on your lap. That's not going to warm you, and so it's fine to use. Garsina and Benita, we learn in Daf 61b. Tana Rabbanan, sages learned in a brisa. Beged she'avad ba kalaim. Let's say you have clothing, and kalaim, shatnez was somehow lost somewhere in there. So harei lo yinkran lo v'kochavim. You shouldn't sell it to a Gentile, even though in general it would be no problem, but because after all, a Gentile doesn't have any obligation not to wear shatnez, a mixture of wool and linen. So you're not causing him to violate in any way. But even so, you can't sell it to a non-Jew. Nor should you make it into a saddle for a donkey. But you can make it into shrouds for a corpse. And why can't you sell it to a non-Jew? The reason for that is that perhaps he'll turn around and sell it to a Jew, and so you don't want to put this out on the market. Amar Raf from Bar Papa. He said, Amar Rav Chisda, citing Rav Chisda, you have clothing that there's some shatnez in there, some place that was lost in there, and you're not sure where exactly that shatnez is. In other words, you have a wool garment and some linen got lost in it, or vice versa. So how do you go about finding it? So umutar. You should dye the garment, and then it's permitted. The amra, the kitna, amra in ayin and sadi switch off in Aramaic, because a certain type of sadi is parallel to an ayin. So semer and kitna, so wool and linen, lo solklu tziva b'hadeh hadadi. Dye doesn't enter into these two fabrics at the same rate, and so if you dye them, you'll be able to identify which one is the semer and which one is the pishtim, and so you'll be able to tell. And if you dye it and then you don't see it, it would still be permitted. Lo yada emar minter natar. And since you don't know where it is, and you don't know that it is in there, and you dyed it and you don't see it there, you say that it must have fallen out. Amar Rav Acha Mishmei Mar Zutra. Haiman, the Avid Lechuta de Kitna, if somebody lost a thread of linen, Beglima de Amra, in a garment of temer, of wool, Vinatke. Okay, so the situation is where he inserted a whole bunch of these different threads, and he took out a whole bunch of them, so Vinatke, and he took some of these threads out. The lo yadia, I natik, I lo natik. He doesn't know whether he took out all of those threads. So if so, even so, shaper dummy, he says it's still fine. And you could assume that you took out all of the threads, and there's no more threads of linen in there. My time, what's the reason? Midaraisa shatnez amar. The Torah says shatnez, losul bash shatnez semer fishim yachdav. So it uses the word shatnez. Ad shua tavi minos. Until it is shua, which is combed, tavi was spun, nose, and woven. So biblically it needs to be all three of these. And that's not the case when we have just this thread of linen in a woolen garment. Rabbanan hu de gazrubei, and it's a rabbinic enactment that they did there. V'hai came in natke, and this one, since you took out some of them, we assume that they were all taken out. Now, Maskevla Rashi objects to this drasha from the pasuk. The ema oshuo tavionos. Let's say that it doesn't mean that it needs to be all three, but it could be either one, or this, or this. We pass like Marzutra that biblically it's only when it's all three. From the fact that the Torah put it in a single word. So it stands to reason that all three are requirements. Now, quoting again from the Mishnah, Zehaklal kol she'neosin bo b'yom tov mishalchan nafso. This is the general rule. Anything which we use on Yom Tov, we send it. And so there's two ways of parsing it. Right now, in the Havamina, we're going to parse it in its most simple way. That this is a general rule. Anything which you use on Yom Tov, kol she'nosin bo b'yom tov mishalchan nafso, you send it. But we'll see that we're going to based on the statement by Rav Sheshes, we're going to reparse it. So, continuing, Rav Sheshes shar lo l'Rabbanan l'shtivei tefillin b'Yom Tov. Rav Sheshes permitted the sages to send tefillin on Yom Tov, and you can't use tefillin on Yom Tov. So Amalei Abaye v'ha'anan snan, but we learned in the Mishnah that kol she'nosin bo b'Yom Tov mishalchan nafso, anything that you could use on Yom Tov you could send. So Amar Lei, Hachik Amar, this is what it means to say. Zaklal, this is the general rule. Kol she'nosin bo b'chol, anything which you use during a weekday, mishalchan nafso b'Yom Tov, you can send it on Yom Tov. So it's just a reparsing of the Mishnah that Zaklal, this is the general rule. Kol she'nosin bo, anything which you can use, b'Yom Tov mishalchan nafso, on Yom Tov we may send it. Okay, that's the end of the first parak. On to the second parak, but we're still on Tesvav Amud Beis. So the Mishnah starts. Yom Tov shechal yos erev Shabbos. Yom Tov occurred on erev Shabbos. So Yom Tov is Friday, and then you have Shabbos. So lo yivashel b'tchilim Yom Tov l'Shabbos. You can't cook initially from Yom Tov for Shabbos. In other words, you haven't started cooking for Shabbos yet, and now it's Yom Tov and you want to start cooking, so you can't start cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But what could he do in such a situation? Mevashelu Yom Tov, since it's Yom Tov and Ochel Nefesh is permitted, so you can do various malacha for the purpose of eating, you cook for Yom Tov. V'im hotir hotir l'Shabbos, and if there ends up being any extra, so you could use that extra for Shabbos. So that's only if you lo yivashel b'tchila, that you shouldn't start cooking from Yom Tov for Shabbos. But it's possible to not start cooking on Yom Tov, but earlier. V'osa tashel me'erev Yom Tov v'somech elav l'Shabbos. And you can make a cooked dish. You can start cooking from erev Yom Tov for the purpose of Shabbos. v'somech alav Shabbos, and rely upon that for Shabbos. Now, if you continue cooking on Yom Tov, it wouldn't be considered starting lo yivashel b'tchila. It wouldn't be starting initially cooking for Shabbos, but you're relying on the fact that there already is food that has been cooked, and now you can continue to cook for Shabbos. So v'osas hafshel me'erev Yom Tov v'somech alav Shabbos. So that's the idea of erev tavshilin. So now the requirements for erev tavshilin. The Mishnah continues. Beis Shammai omrim shnei tavshilin. You need 2 cooked dishes. Beis Hillel omrim tavshil achad. Beis Hillel say a single cooked dish. Umodim b'dagu veitza shalav. And Beis Shammai, according to the simple reading of this, Beis Shammai, in terms of this fish with egg smeared on top of it, shehein shnei tavshilin. This would count as 2 tavshilin, so that would be good. So everybody would agree that such a dish would be good as erev tavshilin. Now, achla osha avad. Let's say you ate that erev tavshilin on Yom Tov, or you lost it. So now you don't have any. Let's say you don't have any other cooked foods for Shabbos. So then any further cooking you're going to do is going to be it's going to be as if you're initially cooking for Shabbos from Yom Tov, and so you shouldn't. If it was eaten or it was lost, you shouldn't cook because it's the general rule of lo yivashel b'tchila. However, let's say you ate it, but there's a little bit left, any amount, kol shehu. But we'll see the Gemara is going to clarify that kol shehu is not any amount, but actually a kazayas. But if you left over a kol shehu, somech alav Shabbos, you can rely upon that for Shabbos. Onto the Gemara. The Gemara begins, Minahane Mili. From where do we know this? Namely that you can't cook initially from Shabbos from Yom Tov, for Shabbos from Yom Tov, unless one uses this erev tavshilin. So how do we know this? Amar Shmuel, Amar Kra, he cites a pasuk, Zachar Siyam Shabbos L'Katra. This is from Shmos, Perek Chaf, from the Aseret Sedibros, Zachar Siyam Shabbos L'Katra, which he interprets Zachar Me'acher Shabal Ashkicho, cause it to be remembered, or remember it from over this other thing which is coming to cause it to be forgotten. Namely, if you have Shabbos after Yom Tov, you'll come to forget that it is Shabbos afterwards, and by making this institution, or by following this institution, you're remembering it. Now this is, since the whole thing is Drabanan, it would seem to be an asmachta, although I would suggest that possibly this is the derivation of the mandate to make the Gzeira. But the typical understanding of it is that this is an asmachta b'alma. It's not really the derivation of it, but it's a hint and scriptural support, even though it's not the real basis of it. Now, my time, what is the reason for instituting this? Rava says that you choose a nice portion for Shabbos and a nice portion for Yom Tov, so that you're preparing nicely for each of these things. Rav Ashi Amar Kadesh Yom Rein Ofen Yom Tov Shabbos Kal V'chomer Yom Tov Chol. That people will say that we see here you can't cook, you can't bake from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and they'll say then certainly you shouldn't be able to cook from Yom Tov Chol for the weekday. Continuing on with the Gemara. Tanya, they learned in a Brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein lo la'adam b'yom tov ela o ochel v'shoseh, o yoshev v'shoneh. A person on Yom Tov should either only eat and drink, or else only sit and learn. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, chalkeu, chatziav l'achila, u'shtiya, v'chatziav l'veis hamidrash. You should split it, half of it for eating and drinking, and half of it for the study hall. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. They're both getting this from the same scriptural support, from the same psukim. One pasuk says that it's talking about Pesach. The pasuk is in Dvarim, Dvarim 16:8. It says, "Sheishish yamim tochal matzos, v'yom hashvi aseres l'Hashem Elokecha, lo sa'asem locha." 6 days you should eat unleavened bread. On the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly to Hashem your God. You shall do no work therein. And so it says Atzeres l'Hashem Elokecha, that it's the Atzeres is the solemn assembly is to Hashem Elokecha. Because of Echad Omer, and another pasuk says, Atzeres Tielachem. This is in Bamidbar 29:35. It says, Vayom Hashemini, Atzeres Tielachem, Kol Malachas Avadol Asasu. On the 8th day you shall have a solemn assembly. You shall do no manner of servile work. So, the typical drasha here is saying, Atzeres Tielachem, that it shall be for you. And that seems to be in contrast to the pasuk in Dvarim where it says Atzeres Lashem Elokecha, that it's a solemn assembly for Hashem Elokecha. So is it for Hashem or is it for you? So Ketzad, how is this? HaKetzad, Rabbi Eliezer Sover, O Kulu Hashem, O Kulu Lachem. It's giving you two alternatives. You could either do entirely towards Hashem, which would be going to the Beis HaMidrash, O Kulu Lachem, that you would eat and drink. Rabbi Yehoshua Savar, you're trying to satisfy both psukim, and you're supposed to, and that's why you split it, half for you, half for God. Continuing, now we're going to digress a little bit to Psachim, Perek Elu Dvarim, which is Psachim 68b. Rasina b'Psachim b'Perek Elu Dvarim. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Hakol Modim B'Atzeres Debina Nami Lachem, the Yom Shnit B'Atar Li Yisraelhu. Everybody agrees by Shavuos that you also require a lachem. Even Rabbi Eliezer, who says that you should spend it entirely in the Beis HaMidrash in general, or entirely eat, by Shavuos he says that you should have some aspect of lachem. Why? The Yom Shnit B'Atar L'Yisrael, it was the day that the Torah was given to Israel, so that would require a little an aspect of lachem. Amar Rava, he says, Hakol Modim b'Shabbos Debina Nami Lachem. That on Shabbos you also need to have this aspect of for yourself. Zichziv v'karasel Shabbos oneg. And you shall call the Shabbos a delight. This is from Yeshaya 58:13. It's the Yeshaya says, Im tashiv mi Shabbos reglecha. If you turn away your foot because of the Shabbos, Asos chafatzecha b'yom kodshi, from pursuing your business on my holy day, v'karasel Shabbos oneg, and call the Shabbos a delight. V'kdosh Hashem mechubad, and the holy of Hashem honorable. V'chibavto me'asos drachecha, and shall honor it, not by doing your typical work, from pursuing your business, and speaking thereof, of your business, presumably. So the pasuk in the middle of the pasuk says, "V'karasel Shabbos oneg," you shall call the Shabbos a delight. So you see that there's a requirement of having oneg Shabbos. So thus Rava says you also need this lachem aspect. Continuing, Rav Yosef Amar Kol Modim b'Purim Debina Nami Lachem. Purim is another festival on which you need an aspect of lachem. The Meikara Lahachi Itkin. It was originally instituted for this, for the lachem aspect, because it says in the Megillah, Yemei Mishte v'Simcha Ksiv Beit. The pasuk is in Esther 9:22. Kayamim asher nachu b'hem hayudim me'oivehem. The days wherein the Jews had rest from their enemies. V'achodesh asher nehpach lahem miyagon l'simcha, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to gladness. U'me'evel liyom tov, and from mourning into a good day. La'asos osam, that they should make them yemei mishteh v'simcha, days of feasting and gladness, and that's the aspect of lachem. And then it continues in Mishlach Manos Ish L'Re'ehu, and of sending portions one man to another, Umatanos L'Avyonim, and gifts to the poor. So it says Yimei Mishteh V'Simcha, so it's obvious that you need this lachem aspect. So continuing, Mar B'Reider Ravina, Mar the son of Ravina, Abe Yasiv Kula Shachta B'Tanisa, would always sit and fast. Levar miyoma da'atzarta, except for Shavuos, Ufurim, and Purim. So that's according to those two things that we cited about Purim and Shavuos. Umala Yom Kippurim, and also Erev Yom Kippur. This name of B'chia Midifti. B'chia Midifti taught Brisa. V'nisem es nafshosechem. B'tisha l'chodesh. This is, he's citing a pasuk from Vayikra 23:32. the pasuk goes, Shabbos Shabboson hu lachem. It shall be unto you a Shabbos of solemn rest. V'inisa mes nafshosechem. And you shall afflict your souls, b'tisha l'chodesh, in the 9th of the month, b'erev, at evening, me'erev ad erev, from evening till evening, tishbesu shabbatechem. You shall keep your Shabbos. It's talking about Yom Kippur. And you could give some kind of, on the level of pshat, answer that it's saying once the evening of the 9th comes, which means so then that begins the day of the 10th. The problem is that it's really Yom Kippur is the 10th of the month. It's not the 9th of the month. So we're going to make a drasha, although on a pshat level there's a way of getting out of it, as I just mentioned. That it really is saying, even though it says 9th, it means 10th, because the evening of the 9th means once the 9th is done. But anyway, the pasuk says, "V'nisam es nafshosechem b'tisha l'chodesh," and other psukim, even the same parak, make it clear that Yom Kippur is on the 10th. So we ask, "V'chi b'tisha mizanin?" Do we actually fast on the 9th? B'halo v'asiri mizanin? Don't we fast on the 10th? Elalom melucha. This is to inform you, kol ha'ochel v'shosa b'tishi. Anybody who eats and drinks on the 9th, malal b'kasav kilus and the tishi v'asiri. It's as if he fasted on the 9th and the 10th. So he has this dual kiyum there. Continuing with the Gemara. So now it's a citation from Nehemiah 8:10. And the pasuk, in the middle of the pasuk, it says, "V'shilchu manos le'ein nachon." You should send portions to him for whom nothing is prepared. The full context of the pasuk is, it says, "Vayomer lahem," and he said to them, "L'chu ichlu mishmanim ushsu takim." Go your way, eat your fat, and drink the sweet. V'shilchu manos le'ein nachon lo, and send portions to him for whom nothing is prepared. Ki kadosh hayom, because today is a holy day, l'adonenu, to our master. Al ta'atsevu, you shouldn't be grieved. Ki chedvas Hashem hi ma'uzchem, for the joy of Hashem is your strength. And this was on Rosh Hashanah, and the people were upset over the fact that they hadn't been mekayem various things. So he's now reassuring them, and in the middle of this he said that you should make this a day of happiness. You shall go your way, eat the fat, and drink the sweet, and send portions unto him for whom nothing is prepared. So the drasha is first going to be on V'shilchu manos le'ein nachon, send portions unto him for whom nothing is prepared. So my le'ein nachon lo. So Amar of Chisda, Shilchu manos l'mishu hayalo lahaniach eruvei tavshilin. Send portions to he who did not have a chance, did not have opportunity to set up an eruv tavshilin, because if this was Rosh Hashanah, and so he might want to cook for Shabbos, typical eruv tavshilin, and so if somebody didn't have opportunity to do that, so you can send, you give him portions, and that way he's going to be happy. So, Shilchu manos l'mishu lo hayalo lahaniach eruvei tavshilin. Aval hayalo lahaniach v'lo haniach. But if he had opportunity to establish an eruv tavshilin, v'lo haniach, and he didn't do so, poshehu, he's negligent, and you shouldn't you shouldn't send to him portions. Continuing a little bit, the pasuk actually continues, because it says "V'shulchu manos le'ein nachon lo ki kadosh hayom l'adonenu." The al ta'atsevu, you shouldn't be grieved. Ki chedvas Hashem hi ma'uzchem, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. So, my ki chedvas Hashem hi ma'uzchem. Am Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Amar lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem said to Israel, Banai levo alai v'kitshu hayom v'haminu bi v'ani poreh. Hashem said to the Bnei Yisrael, borrow on my account, and sanctify the day, V'haminu, be entrust in me, and I will repay. So, in a similar vein, well, it's going to continue on the next daf, so we'll stop here.